Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Investigative Journal, the greatest show on earth. And I'm telling you, it's been a while since I've been back, but it's good to be back, and let's get started right away. Boy, how many lies have we been told in our life? I mean, every time you turn on the TV, something else happens that makes me wonder why the hell I'm even here. I mean, it is amazing to watch Washington at work. I was thinking the other day, wouldn't it be great if we just, for one day, didn't include in our news broadcasts anything about the government, because they're really full of shit. I mean, there's no other way around it. I mean, if you're watching this fiasco now in Washington and believe that these people aren't working together for your demise, you got a big problem. And you know something? Artificial intelligence is really no match for natural stupidity. And my God, can't people get it once and for all? Let me explain it to you real simple. The Democrats and the Republicans are playing a game called the Hegelian dialectic. Now, what that means is both parties really are working together for the better good of the New World Order, one world government, one world religion, going to screw you left and right. And what happens is people pick sides. It's like a baseball team. Let's pretend we're at a baseball field, and there's about 50 people there, and one team is called the Republicans, and one team is called the Democrats. And the Republicans say, okay, if you're for closed borders, if you're for a strong America, if you want to make America great again, if you want to make America safe again, if you want to make America free again, if you want to make America strong again, then you're on our team. Now, if you're on the other side, so 25 people go over there to play with the Republicans. And then you have the Democratic manager come up and say, hey, if you want open borders, if you want a global economy, if you want socialism, if you want to have free schooling, if you want to have free medical care, if you want to have free ice cream after the baseball game, join us. And 25 people go over there. And then basically the game starts. And you know what? They go back and forth. And nothing ever gets done. And let me give you an example. Let's use the border right now. This situation in the border is crazy. I mean, we got 10,000. I was watching a show the other day. We got 10,000 people crossing in the Del Rio sector. And, they're catching like 1,000 people a day. Isn't this orchestrated? Yeah, they're all coming. Just like they did in Europe. Remember the big problem that Europe has had and is having with open borders, and how certain groups are taking over cities where police won't even go into them. And they're changing the face of the European people, right? So Italy's not going to be Italian. France is not going to be French. Norway's not going to be Norwegian. Sweden's not going to be Swedish. And then we got America's not going to be American. Well, what is American? American should be basically this. If our government was not playing a game with you of the Hegelian dialectic, then tell me why they've never solved these simple laws that would make our borders safe. I mean, sure, we're for immigration, but it has to be legal immigration, right? But they do everything to make this a crisis, to show you on the news how we must do it, and so the Republicans are fighting for it, the Democrats are not fighting for it. But really, they're going to get their way. And the synthesis of the whole story is that they're going to change the face of America, and it's going to be a socialist, communist state very quickly. And you can see that rumblings going on in Congress right now. So get with it, people. These people are working together, but giving you a public story that's completely different, and you're falling for it. 99% of Americans are falling for it. And if they're not falling for it and they know something's up in Denmark, then most people just forget about it and say, I can't do anything, so I'm quitting. I'm going off the grid. There ain't going to be no grid. There's going to be nothing. Look at, what they're doing in Venezuela. I mean, that is an orchestrated effort to destroy that country. You got 3 or 4 million people escaping. I was just talking to a person right now that lives, we're not in Caracas, but somewhere out in the country land, and they were telling me that they don't have any water coming out of their spigot, right? They don't have any water. She can't buy clothes. And food is rare. They got to make their own. And this is crazy. And that was a country, if you went there 20 years ago, was the most prosperous country around. And then Chavez came in. Now we got Maduro. And these are Jesuit pawns. And so socialism does not work, but you actually have people in Congress here saying that they want America to be socialistic. You got Bernie Sanders running for president on a socialistic agenda. And Americans are buying it. Do you know the statistics of millennials that would like socialism are like, 50% of all millennials want socialism? Do they know what? Do you want the Jesuits, folks? That's why I say, listen to my show if you're a socialist or if you don't like Trump, because you're going to get a dose of who your real leaders are, and that's the Jesuits and all of their minions in the Vatican and all of the Vaticanites that work for them, Trump included. He's just playing the part of the American nationalist against the bad guys who are the socialists. And so you pick a side, and no matter what team you're on, like in that baseball game I was talking about in the beginning, you folks are going to lose. Yes, lose. And lose big time. Talk is cheap until you hire a lawyer. Right. I'm telling you, that's what they do in Washington, They hire lawyers are getting, $1,000 an hour there? I was just working for a lawyer. I spent 30 or 40 hours working for the son of a bitch, and he won't pay me. Yeah, he came up with some story. At first all my work was great. And isn't this amazing? These lawyers, they're such scoundrels. I may do a show on this cat, this goofball. And let me tell you something. Trying to squeeze money out of them is, take my advice. Oh boy. Let me tell you. But anyway, life goes on, right? Nothing was learned, nothing was taught. Very funny. Now, let's go on. Dogs bark, but the caravan moves on, right? What the hell is that? Somebody just flashed that across my screen here. I guess they think I'm barking and mad because the lawyer didn't pay me. Isn't that you? Then, the same lawyer, he's trying to bilk his clients for more. He's dropping clients because they're not paying him enough. Well, treat each day as it's your last, folks. One day, it may just be your last day. All right. Okay. So, come to my show for what reason? We've been screaming and talking about the Vatican-led New World Order for the better part of 15 years. So have they. Listen to these guys. Should I stop them? And you know what they're saying? This is doggy free speech. Free speech with the dogs. They just won't stop, will they? Okay, the doggy free speech zone is over. I had a chat with them, and they refuse to stop. They say, under the Constitution of the United States, dogs have a right to bark during radio shows, and they can't stand there protesting whatever the hell I'm talking about. Anyway, I'll talk about my dogs on another time. I've got 6 dogs. They're all service dogs for each one of my problems. One's my psychological service dog. One is my physical service dog. One is and I keep going, I've got 6 categories of problems, mental and physical, that require the assistance of our canine friends. And I'm not afraid to say it. The only problem I have is when I go to get on an airplane and I bring 6 service dogs, nobody believes me. No. They don't believe me. And I go through each one. Each one of my service dogs has their little service uniform on. And I walk in with 6 dogs. And I can fit all of them on 2 seats, so I pay for 2, but they won't let me on. I refuse to put them in the cargo, part of the plane, because I said, well, that's what they're here for. I'm frightened of airplanes. I cannot stand to be on an airplane. And if I get up there, I'm going to go crazy. So they say, well, we're going to put you in the cargo area with them. And he said, well, I'm not paying for a first class seat here if I'm sitting in the cargo area. So we have this big idea. And then, they start going through their metal detector situation. And each one of my service dogs has a little chain, with his name on it and his service position. And it goes off and they won't let him through. So, I have a hell of a time getting my 6 service dogs through the airline. Back to the Jesuits, a little levity. Never hurt anybody except in this world. It's basically, if you want your opinion, someone's going to ask you to fill out the necessary forms. That's what this world's come down to. It's crazy. It's absolutely a crazy world to live in when you listen to the stuff coming out of Washington. And I could probably talk for days, but I'm going to concentrate on just the general stuff of whatever that comes out of their mouth. Whether it be the border, we're just talking about the border. Let me give you an example. The Republicans now are screaming, we got to change the border. Trump is screaming, we got to do this. Well, hell, for 2 years they had the Senate, they had the House, and they had the presidency. Why didn't they do it then? And for 40 years, you've had Republican, Democrat. Nobody's going to do anything. This is an orchestrated effort to flood America, change the face of it. Let's cut to the chase and forget about all the little BS. And what happens when there's a Democratic president? It's going to be an open border. It's going to be whatever the hell they want it to be is basically it. And where does all this come from? So if we're heading down this, where does communism come from? Socialism, democracy, all these things. Every one of them has the hand of the Jesuits on them. And nobody wants to look into it. We've been doing this for God knows how many years here. And first of all, people don't believe it. 99, there's a fraction of people that do. And then you sit there and beat your head against the wall. And you go, well, why? It makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. And people just don't get it. I've tried to figure it out, and I come to the conclusion that it's just too damn hard for people to change their belief system, because that's what it boils down to. A changing of your belief system, because in America, you're ingrained with many, many things here that you can't get rid of. One is you got to understand your government. You know it doesn't work for you, but you don't even know how it works. So it's your responsibility to understand it. And let me tell you, by realizing that both parties really work together and they play this game so that they can get away with their synthesis, what they want in the end. That's what happens. So where did they learn this from? Oh, the Jesuits have been doing it for years. Where did all these countries how come all these countries had revolutions? If you start looking into when I say the Jesuits were involved in the French Revolution, the Russian, the American, people start going, oh, come on. But when you really start looking at it, they are. Now, when you really start looking at socialism and communism, where the hell do you think that came from? There's an interesting picture. And there's a picture that you're going to find of, we all know who Ignatius Loyola. He's the first Jesuit general. And their organization that Hitler once told us about, Hitler said he created the Reich based on the organization of the Jesuits in the Vatican. That's his quote. I'm not saying it. So don't you think he was involved with him? And the more you look at it, the more you see, and we've done many shows on that, But I want to talk about the first Jesuit general, Mr. Loyola. And isn't it amazing? I always remember the picture of George Bush, and the presidents, when they go visit the Vatican, they'll sit under the picture of Ignatius Loyola and say, "Oh, you dumb fucking people. You don't even know who he is." And people don't. People don't know who he is. And that's what we try to do here. And first of all, I don't want to hear the Christians go, "Greg, you're swearing." I can't help it sometimes. It's not a children's show, so bleep it out or something. We've all heard the words. And I'm not going to get into a George Carlin rant on why people that don't allow people to swear ought to just go to another country or something and learn a different language if you don't allow. I'll swear in Italian. How's that? You know? All right, so if you look, there's a picture that's interesting. I'll tell you symbolically where communism came from, and then I'll back it up with some facts. The Church of the Jesus altarpiece by Jesuit artist Andrea Pozza. He's an SJ artist, Society of Jesus. He was born in 1642 and lived in 1709. Died in 1709. Featuring Ignatius Loyola with his red standard. It's a standard flag. It's a red flag. And they got God, and reported by the article in June 14, 2008, New York Times, was effectively buried about 1908, shortly prior to the rise of various 20th century political movements employing the standard of the red flag. Okay, so this picture of Loyola, and you got Jesus holding the red flag that Loyola's kind of giving him. Crazy. You don't hear about that. People don't even question it. This is interesting. I'm looking inside. This is incredible. I found a room big enough. I'm looking at something here. Wow. Anyway, I got carried away. But the Jesuit roots of socialism and communism are important for you to really know, because when I start saying that, isn't it interesting that the Jesuit general now is from Venezuela, and that recently they've been retiring them before their death? Usually what happens is, like the Pope, we have two popes on earth now, two Christs on earth. They got 3 Jesuit generals roaming the land now. Usually they die and then another one takes over. But now we got 3, and the latest is one. We got one that is now in Syria doing all that kind of stuff. Hans Kolvenbach, he was one, and there was another one. Now we got Sosa, who is not Sammy, the baseball player, but he's from Venezuela. And so I got an article that I'll read to you maybe in the next half hour, or what is tomorrow, Saturday, so I'll be back Monday. If God willing and the creek don't rise, I will be back. But in the 17th and 18th century, the Jesuits began a system of missionary work called reductions in order to make them into good Jesuits, the native peoples in Spain, Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, and America. These were the beginning of the communist and socialist idea of the human society that dominated the 20th century. These were, why do you think the Georgetown University is right next to the White House? They get all their marching orders and their intelligence. You think these presidents are smart enough to know this stuff? They're given a script. I'm telling you. Trump's an entertainer. He's actually really a stage actor. And he's doing a pretty damn good job because people love listening to him, Well, where did I learn all this stuff? I learned it all when I first started to pique my interest when I lived in Rome for a number of years. And I saw the scandals that were going on in the Vatican. And so I started to think, man, this doesn't make sense. And ever since then, nothing makes sense when you look at America and its government, the way things go on. Even going back to 9/11, everybody's forgotten about that. I mean, there's a crisis every day. So there I was in Rome, and I can remember 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock, you'd go find yourself a nice little wine bar, have a glass of wine, some cheese. And I used to sit near the Vatican in a little street called, what the hell was it? Well, anyway, it's got a nickname called the Strada di Puttane, which means the Street of the Whores. And it's right parallel to the Vatican, St. Peter's Square. And now all that's being sold there are, trinkets and rosaries and phony holy water. Americans come there and pay for $20 bottles of water. I asked one of the guys, I said, hey, I want to get in this business. Can I put some water and make some nice little bottle and sell it for $20? Jesus. So they sell religious articles there on the left side of the street. And I got told, I was told by one of the shopkeepers what this street really was. Right after the war, it changed because the Vatican was trying to change its image. But it was where all the prostitutes used to live, and the priests would be serviced there on the second floors of the shops. On the other side, I asked, well, what about the other side of the street? So that's where most of the homosexuals were. So really, it was quite near the Vatican and very, very convenient. They just had to walk across the street and then run back to the Vatican and say the Mass. So that changed after World War II because they were changing their image as they were here in America with movies like My Way. You can remember Bing Crosby, the singing priest, and all these other shows that came out showing the Vatican as this beautiful organization. None of it talked about, all the pedophiles that were ringing the bells of St. Mary. You don't think that was going on in the 50s? But anyway, what a scumbag organization the Vatican really is. And I don't know any other word for it. And so being born a Catholic, I wondered, what the hell did they do to me? Boy, nothing. Well, people said because I came out against them, oh, you must have been abused and you're getting even now. I said, no, I wasn't. I went to Notre Dame High School, St. John Brebeuf grade school, and nothing ever happened to me. I loved it. It was a great place. And I looking back, not knowing what I know now, if I didn't know what I know now, I'd do it over again. I enjoyed my friends, and the priests were always pretty good. Nothing. Except for the guy, they used to hit you on the head with their ring, paddles, but it was good for you. You knew you better study history or you're going to get your ass kicked. But no, nothing like that. But when I went to the Vatican and worked as a journalist, and I became completely disillusioned. And for about 3 months when I started to understand what was going on, I thought, I'm getting out of this. I'm going up to some mountain, going to live forever. Forget about it. This is crazy. I can't handle it. I don't believe this stuff. This is not true. So there I am sitting on the Street of the Whores and talking to a priest. I had an interview, a pretty high-level guy, and I asked him, I said, what the hell's in those Vatican archives? And he said, boy, if we told you the truth, the people just couldn't handle it. And I was working on a Vatican scandal about the bloodline of Christ. The Jesuits were pushing this then. Yes, the bloodline of Christ. Christ's bloodline lived on in a group called the Priore de Sion in France, and that led me there. And crazy stuff. But what I'm getting at is to look at Venezuela now and know that there's a Jesuit general, there's a connection. And people have to realize where, communism and socialism came. And, God, that's just one story of their shenanigans worldwide. Back in 3 minutes on The Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app. for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, sit tight. Don't rush. Be calm. Did you do your yoga today? There's so many people out there with all these different ideas about how to calm down. How can you calm down with the crap that's going on in the world today? It's crazy. I don't know how people do it. I was out the other day with somebody and they said, "Boy, you're so calm." I said, "No. I feel like I need to be put in a straitjacket just to live so I don't go crazy." Yeah, I mean, you listen to the news for 10 minutes if you know what's going on. You just sit there and pull your hair out and go, how can these people lie right to your face? How can they just do it? I mean, it's crazy. Well, once people start accepting lies because they're not smart enough to do their homework in history or never bothered because they listened to the crap that they learned in college. It's kind of like going to law school and listening to all the crap that you learn there. And then you come out and you see how these guys really are. And you go, hell, that ain't helping me. If I play by the rules here, I'll get my ass kicked. It's crazy. But to get back to what I was saying, you really have to understand how the Jesuits and the Vatican created communism, or really structured it through the Paraguay reductions or experiments way back in Paraguay during the 17th and 18th centuries. And really, that's what America lacks, the history of this organization and their connections to the political sphere of the world. And when I say sphere, I mean the group of people, the large body of leaders all over the world that are working together and have a plan to basically Romanize this entire world. And if you look at what's going on, it's really easy to figure out if you sat in Rome. Now, I'm sitting there on the Piazza No, I'm sitting on the street of the whores with this priest telling me about the people could not handle the truth in the Vatican archives. And so my curiosity was piqued. And from that point on, it led me on a journey of really understanding two things: the governments of the world, how they operate from a large level; two, how the religions and the Vatican operate, what the religion I grew up in really is all about. And one, the Vatican is a sick organization. And two, secondly, they're satanic. And they work together with the Freemason lodges and all of these secret societies. And when you start really piecing every story together, there's two areas I like most. I like this communism story because it explains why Russia was the socialist, the Soviet Union was the Soviet Union, why socialism in Cuba and Venezuela are there. And then I also like the history of the American Revolution, not told to you by your college professors, but told to you by your own reading of undisclosed documents about the founding fathers. When I say fathers, I mean the founding Jesuit fathers. And once you start seeing this, you start really understanding how this whole operation works. And so when you take it to the our daily life, you see how full of shit these people are. When it comes to open borders, when it comes to this idea of Russian collusion that you've heard about for 2 years, when it comes to most everything they talk about, even the shape of your earth isn't what it really is. You think you're living on some globe that spins around the sun. Well, you got another thing coming, because you ain't moving. You're on a flat surface, and all the real particulars I don't know, but I'm telling you something. You've been lied to even about the shape of the earth you live on. And people can't handle it. It's just too damn hard. They'd rather sit, become a lawyer, become a doctor. That's fine. We need them. Well, we don't need most lawyers, so put it that way. I'll get rid of most of them. But sure, we need good doctors. But isn't it interesting that if you look at what's happening in America, we got an overabundance of lawyers, and there's a shortage of doctors. Now, that's because you need 10 lawyers for every, malpractice case that a person files. Or you need 10 lawyers for every kid who's now suing his parents for scolding him. Or you need 10 lawyers to handle the problem over at the university because you can't allow conservatives to speak. This whole country has got a real problem. The theory of America is fantastic. I love the idea. But the reason the Constitution was put into place wasn't for what you think it was. It was to just think of that religious freedom section in it. That tells you everything when you really know the story of these scoundrels. In Borgo Santo Spirito Cinque, look up where that's at, who lives there in Rome. And then also, that little country carved out of Italy by Mussolini. It's about as big as a football field, surrounded by walls. But yet they love open borders, right? They let everybody in the countries. But you want to see how many of these, how many people are, I said this. A friend of mine from Italy called me and said, Greg, we're getting overflow of people coming from, they're coming in from the Adriatic Sea. They're dying on ships. There's millions of people flooding Europe and Italy, and there's sections of Rome you can't go into anymore. And they're sleeping all over. They're inhabiting buildings that are empty. You leave your house, you got to worry that somebody's going to be sleeping in it when you get home. And I said, how many of these guys go inside the walls of the Vatican? Not one. I said, okay, you want illegal immigration? Pope, open up your doors, those walls that you live behind, and let them all come in there. Oh, there's some sleeping on the sidewalk around St. Peter's Square now. But let me tell you something. when you start looking at the numbers too, they get money. The Vatican's got a little deal with the EU where they're getting money for all these illegals as well. So now we got this influx of illegals coming into America. Well, this has been happening for a long time, but now it's being pushed and orchestrated. Money flowing in from, a lot of Jesuit shills like George Soros and the rest. And so you're going to have a huge problem in America, and you don't know who your enemy is. That's the real problem. So, again, my favorite story revolves around, well, there's another one. I love 9/11, not from the point of view of what happened, and we don't even know how many were killed. We don't even know if there were really, if the Twin Towers was really what they said it was. There's a theory out there called the Hollow Towers, which I really love, and I have a little bit of information I can give you. If I can this half hour, I will. But it takes me back. I spent 2 years of my life right after 9/11 researching it. I interviewed a number of, hundreds of people. And I was convinced without a shadow of a doubt that it was an inside job and nothing will change. But nobody talks about it anymore. It's like, oh, it's an inside job, but who cares if your government did it? Who cares if the Jesuits were involved? Who cares? It's only a building. Now they put up another one. Give me a break. So that's an interesting story as well. So we have the communist, where did it come from? Socialism. Then we have, really, where did your country come from? America. There's a lot of these real intelligent, and I say that because I call them intelligent. They're intelligent. They're like horses with blinders on. They can run a race. They can really do a good job, but they don't know. They don't look past their blinders. And you get them on the left and you get them on the right. And they have great, they seem to know everything, but they don't really give you the whole story. They refuse to even consider what we talk about in this show, and that is the Vatican Jesuit New World Order and what they're all about and how they operate. They refuse because they know if they say one word about it, they will be banned. Not banned from Twitter or Facebook. They'll be banned from the universal, you won't speak anywhere, my friend. You'll have to sit in some little town in Mexico doing a little podcast where 50 people listen to you. But you got, something, you'd be onto the truth. And what is really the key is learning that, right? Now, do these guys give you the bullshit, one side of the story, and then go home and go, God, they start reading everything that we do here, and go, oh, I wish I was like Greg. He can say what he wants, and nobody cares because he doesn't make any money at it. And I can't live like that. I got to have my American dream. What is the American dream? It's the American scream. Because what good is anything if you're leaving out part of the story and you can't? I love these journalists now. Let's start with Sean Hannity on the left. Now, personally, I like the guy. I listen to him because I want to hear the right. He's on the right side of the story. I want to hear the conservative right-wing side. He has said, journalism in America is dead. Well, Sean, I could have told you that 25 years ago. And do you think, what are you doing over there with Fox? You got some great stuff for America. I love your take on a lot of things, but you're leaving out the real key. And how much do you really know about this story? And the idea of the Vatican and the Jesuits involved in this, and what's really going on behind the scenes with Freemasonry and your buddy Donald Trump, and really where they're bringing America, despite what you say. And, if this wasn't involved, if there wasn't this underlying story, sure, I'd be with you. America first, and make America great, make America safe, make America beautiful, make America everything. But it's only a ruse right now, man. You know it. I know it. It ain't never going to be that way. Because behind the scenes, we have these guys. Now, there's a story by R.W. Thompson. It was called The Footprints of the Jesuits. And I'm not going to get into stuff like, when I love when they start looking at Joseph Stalin and talking about how he killed 62 million, how Adolf Hitler killed 21 million, Mao Zedong 49 million. Where did these people come from and who was behind them? Well, we've documented a lot of things that Sean Hannity or the people on the left, like Mr. Scarborough or whatever his name is, won't touch, because if they do, they're gone. They're history. You got to play one side or the other and forget about the real story. And this, so let's really look for just a minute here and get serious. Now, R.W. Thompson in his book, The Footprints of the Jesuits, said this. He said, the government established by them in Paraguay was essentially a monarchy. It could not have been otherwise. Under the principles of their constitution, under the false name of Christian Republic, it was to all intents and purposes a theocratic state, so constructed as to be free from all European influences except such as emanated from their superiors at Rome. Now, who gave, whether it was the 6th, 17th, or 18th century, who gave these people the right to do that? And you journalists and people in America who praise these people, call the Pope the Holy Man, don't even care about what they did to people in the past or what they're doing to them today, because you know the story lies there. So, they had what the church and the Pope was through them, and whatsoever commands he gave were uniquely obeyed by them, without stopping to investigate or concerning themselves in the least to know whether the church and the Pope approved or disapproved of them. So we had these Jesuits over there creating this new religion. I said they're really good. They create religions. They create new religions. They've started, I'm a firm believer that, the LDS Church could be traced to Rome, as can be Islam and the Quran. They're great at creating religions and governments, they're really good at it. I wish they'd come up with a new one. I mean, they're playing this old game of communism, socialism, and democracy. Get another one. Come on. Let's have a contest. Who can create the next great form of government and religion? And I bet you it would be a Jesuit astronomer. Yeah, he's going to create one on Mars that doesn't even exist. And did you know that the greatest astronomers of the world are Jesuits? And did you know they have a little big telescope up on Mount, Graham, with the University of Arizona on Indian Territory, where their little lens in their biggest, most powerful telescope is called Satan? Or Lucifer. Yeah, Lucifer. All right, I digress a little. In order to impress the natives, this is going now to Paraguay, with the idea of their independence and of superiority over their monastic orders and the church ecclesiastics, they practiced the most artful means to persuade them to hold no intercourse with their Spaniards or Portuguese. So they're isolating them. Now, I ask you, I've done shows regarding the Jesuits in Paraguay, and I want to do it again in pieces, because it's too much for people to handle. It's too hard. But when you start looking at how the Jesuits created this form of government, lifestyle, communism, so it's all fascistic. And I'll read some. Let's wait till Monday to get into this, because I got a couple other things I want to do. One thing, talking about fascism. Why the hell is, when you go into, the Congress? I always get mixed up, the Senate, the Congress. You'll see two fasci right by the podium, on each side of the podium, the Roman fasci. Why is that there in the supposed republic, beautiful freedom? I wouldn't have built it like that. All of our buildings look like Rome, And what do we got Persephone up on the top of the Capitol building? Does anybody ever wonder about these things? Heck no. It's just a coincidence. Do you know when they put that Persephone goddess statue up there from ISIS and all this stuff, Lincoln wouldn't even come out of the White House? Because he knew what the Jesuits were all about. How many times have we gone over that story? It goes in one ear and out the other. You think there's a constitutional crisis here now in America? We got a crisis of, we got 99% of the, I don't care how smart these people are. They're either hiding this, and the people that aren't are been so lied to that they're not even given a chance. And I would have never known this if I hadn't been lucky enough to live in Rome for a number of years, like 7. And incredible stuff. And I really wonder sometimes why people can't really get their finger on it. And if they do, then how come there aren't, why can't we ever get to a point where this is on the stage of public discourse? That's all I've ever asked for. If you go back to some of my shows 15 years ago, when I was arguing with Alex Jones, who, by the way, works for these people as well, my argument was, listen, when I was called crazy, you're crazy, talking, these are just old priests, they don't have any power. That's what he used to say. Now he's talking like, oh yeah, the Pope this Pope is satanic, but there's a good side to the Vatican. I said, Alex, all you guys, listen, all we need to do, it's not a question of who's right or wrong here. It's a question of getting it out and let people making up their mind. But why can't you get the story out on the table? Because, it makes too much sense. If you got this story out there, too many people believe it, and they'd have a crisis of, their mind would be blown, would be the crisis. How many people's minds are being blown off, by this story because they'd say, my God, I've been believing the wrong thing my whole life about everything. And I would add, yes, about the earth you live on too. So, to my friends on the left, Tucker Carlson and all these people who are very smart, don't get me wrong. If they're so smart, how come they overlook this story? Or do they rationalize it? Or do they really understand that if they say anything, I won't say the word, they're screwed? It's a big deal. And I'd like to sit with them sometimes and say, hey, let's just talk about this. How come this story can't get out? It makes more sense than a lot of things you do on your shows. And a lot of the history has been left from the American people to never get. And you guys are complaining about, if you're on the right, you're complaining that the left is taking over. And then the left is complaining the right are fascists and MAGA, Trump, crazy Walmart, smelly people. I mean, it's insane, but the real story lies right here. And the reason I say it, because by researching it, it makes a lot of sense. And that's what both sides always are saying. We want to make sense out of all this. And these people don't make sense. The left doesn't make sense. The right says the left doesn't make sense. And the left says the right doesn't make sense. But really, both of them, starting where I left off, are working together by arguing constantly and making the American people draw sides, and an ignorant American people. And the more people you bring in from these countries where they can't read and write, the easier they are to become sheep and followers. And I don't care, you can get a PhD 4.0 lawyer or a doctor in history, and they're going to be as dumb as a doornail anyway on this subject, because they're either too damn afraid to do it, or they just say, that's a conspiracy theory. I mean, let's forget about it. But you know what they say about conspiracy theories? The only one who believe it are the ones who research it. And I recommend you guys do that, and then go to sleep at night and say, hey, look yourself in the mirror and say, when I wake up tomorrow and start criticizing the left or the right, no matter what, if you work for CNN or Fox, can I really live with myself? Because There is no freedom of speech in this country. The country was formed on different reasons that you'll never get to. And you're going to make a living by keeping those stories from the American people because you talk good, you're smart, and you take a position either left or right. Okay, that's my story. And I'm sticking to it, as they say. The hollow earth theory. We're only got 2 minutes, a minute and a half here. Hollow tower theory in 9/11. Interesting story. And I knew the guy. They really researched it probably more than anybody. And I spent a lot of time with him when I was researching 9/11. And at that time, he wasn't onto this, but he's always kept up doing 9/11 in the face of, think about it. It's only been 18 years, but it seems like 1,000,000 years ago. Nobody talks at 9/11. Sure, it was Muslims. But nobody says inside job, man. That's what it was. And how could you live with your government if you knew they did it? You can't. And so you forget about it. You conveniently forget about it and go on to the next one. I'm a Trump MAGA man. I'm a socialist Bernie Sanders man. Oh, watch, I can't say man. You're getting to the point you can't talk. Man, woman. There is a difference. Like I say on my show, the only people that can't, when you listen, the only qualification here is you got to declare whether you're a man or a woman to listen to my show and have a birth certificate to prove it. You can't change along the way. Back tomorrow on Monday on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.